At the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona, Spain, the clear star of the men's basketball tournament was the Dream Team, the American behemoth which was probably the greatest basketball team ever assembled. The Dream Team, of course, won the gold medal, but do you remember who won the bronze medal at those Olympics? That is the story of today's video, and it all begins with the birth of a nation. The backstory. Though it's been in the news much more recently thanks to some drama involving its near neighbors, Lithuania isn't a country that many people seem to give much thought to, which is actually a real shame because it is one heck of a country. Along with Latvia and Estonia, it's one of 3 countries making up the Baltic states, so named due to its geography along the Baltic Sea. It shares borders with the aforementioned Latvia along with Belarus, Poland, and the Russian semi-exclave of Kaliningrad, which helps to explain the drama that I mentioned earlier. With a population estimated to be just under 3 million people as of 2024, it's a small country, and it's most especially small compared to its much larger geographic neighbors, and this has caused some serious challenges throughout its history. While its story goes back to settlements that are up to 10,000 years old, for today's video, I want to just zoom in on Lithuania in the 20th century. In 1918, after spending a long stretch of time under the Russian Empire, the country re-established itself as a sovereign state. It remained this way up until the start of World War II, when it became occupied by the Soviet Union under the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact signed between the Soviets and Nazi Germany. Following a brief period of German occupation during the war, Lithuania was again absorbed back into the Soviet Union, and it stayed that way for nearly 50 years. But one thing that was a constant throughout this time in Lithuania was basketball. It's not just popular there, that's actually a huge understatement. It is the national sport of Lithuania. Whether as an independent nation or as part of the Soviet Union, Lithuania has produced a number of outstanding basketball players, including Hall of Famer Arvydas Sabonis, as well as current NBA players like Jonas Valanciunas and Domantas Sabonis, who is the son of the great Hall of Famer. So given this fact, it's no surprise that the country was pumped to participate in the 1992 Summer Olympics, as it would be their first as an independent nation after the fall of the Soviet Union. But as a former Soviet bloc country in the early 1990s, one thing they were very short on was money, like super short on money. There wasn't enough money for day-to-day needs within Lithuania, let alone to support a national basketball team. But with the Olympics on the horizon and a fire in their belly, the men's national team got a financial boost from perhaps the most unlikely of sources: Lithuania and the Grateful Dead. In order to make it to the 1992 Summer Olympics, a fundraising effort was launched for the team in the Bay Area of San Francisco. On the surface, this might seem like an odd spot for a Lithuanian basketball team to raise money, but it actually made a lot of sense. And this is because Šarūnas Marčiulionis, a member of that national basketball team, played in the NBA at the time, and he was well acquainted with Donnie Nelson, who was an assistant coach with the Golden State Warriors, who are located in the Bay Area. They worked together to pull together a few dollars, but it was more like pennies coming in at the time. But then they caught an absolutely crazy break. A local sports writer named George Shirk decided to write a piece on their financial plight, which then landed on the desk of a man named Dennis McNally, who happened to be the public relations manager for the American rock legends The Grateful Dead. Upon showing this story to the band, they were immediately moved by the story of these upstarts from Lithuania. After all, the Grateful Dead themselves were all about freedom and liberty, so the story of this tiny nation throwing off the shackles of oppression really resonated with their own personal vibes. Plus, the Grateful Dead got deep pockets. We know that. And so, the Grateful Dead decided then and there that they would bankroll the Lithuanian men's basketball team for the 1992 Olympics. This seems absolutely wild, right? Like, can you imagine Metallica sponsoring a handball team, or Eminem sponsoring a gymnastics team, or Flava Flav sponsoring a water polo team? Oh wait, that last one actually happened, which is a story on its own, right? Anyway, in addition to providing some much needed hard currency, the Grateful Dead also had their own designer send over a box of custom-made t-shirts, tie-dyed of course because it's the Grateful Dead, but in the colors of red, yellow, and green, Lithuania's national colors. On the shirts was an image of a skeleton dunking a basketball, which was meant to be a metaphor. This represented Lithuania, the phoenix rising from the ashes, set to reach new heights. And now, with cash in hand and tie-dye on their backs, it was off to Barcelona. But really, the story was just getting started. The 1992 Olympics. Just for a moment, picture how that basketball team must have felt rolling into those Olympics. Their country is like an hour and a half old at this point. They came with little more than lunch money, and what little funding they did have came from an American touring hippie rock band. But they were there. They were playing under their own flag, and they were on the world stage playing their national sport. So it was 100% go time. The round robin play went surprisingly well for a team that nearly didn't even make it to the event. Mercifully, the Lithuanians were in Group B, so they got to avoid the American Dream Team for as long as possible. They finished tied for first in their group with 4 wins and just 1 loss. And in a level of drama and foreshadowing that would make Hollywood proud, that single loss came to the unified team of the Commonwealth of Independent States, or CIS, which was made up of 12 of the 15 former Soviet republics. Lithuania was one of 3 republics that chose to compete as independent nations, so playing against their old Soviet adversaries made that loss that much more difficult to swallow. In the quarterfinals, they comfortably beat Brazil to move on to the semifinals, where they finally ran into the juggernaut of the United States. In an outcome that surprised no one, Lithuania fell to the Americans, but it set up a bronze medal showdown with, you guessed it, the unified team made up of former Soviet republics. Honestly, looking back on it now, this bronze medal game was undoubtedly more interesting than the gold medal game. About that gold medal game, spoiler alert, the US destroyed Croatia in the final, winning by 22 points when the outcome was never really in doubt. Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and the rest of the greatest basketball team ever assembled got their gold medals. Whoop-de-doo. But that bronze medal game was no mere basketball game. It was the essence of what made the Grateful Dead cut that check. Here was the newly minted nation being thrown back into competition with their old Soviet overlords, former comrades staring each other down from opposite sides for the first time in generations. It was David versus Goliath, and an Olympic medal hung in the balance. And in the end, like all awesome underdog stories, David prevailed. Lithuania won 82-78 in an absolute nail-biter of a game that, to this day, is probably one of the most remarkable basketball games ever played. It was a symbol of the rebirth of a nation on the largest global stage imaginable. And in recognition of the help they received along the way, Lithuania accepted their bronze medals wearing their custom-made tie-dyed t-shirts, which by this point had become the must-have souvenir of these Olympic Games. Seriously, you can't even make this stuff up. The aftermath. While you could be forgiven for thinking that this medal was some one-off fluke, it turned out to have kickstarted a string of Olympic basketball successes for Lithuania. It ended up being the first of 3 consecutive Olympic Games where the men's basketball team won medals, as they also found their way to the podium in 1996 in Atlanta and 2000 in Sydney. The guy who designed those t-shirts too, New York City artist Greg Spears, he decided to help out in his own big way too when his t-shirts became a hit. He has donated 100% of the profits from the sale of those t-shirts, which by now is probably up into the millions of dollars. And where were those profits donated to, you ask? Well, they were donated to Sarunas Marčiulionis' children's charity, which was used to help untold number of kids in Lithuania. You can actually get your hands on one of those t-shirts too, by the way. You can still buy them directly from Greg Spears' website at skullman.com. Though be warned, I think the website is about as old as the t-shirt design itself at this stage. In the end, as the final buzzer echoed that day in the arena in Barcelona, the 1992 Lithuanian men's basketball team stood as more than just bronze medalists. They were symbols of resilience, of defiance, and of a new nation's hope. Emerging from the shadow of Soviet oppression, their story was about freedom and pride and the unbreakable spirit of a basketball-loving people. Their story, painted in tie-dyed colors of independence and backed by an unlikely group of rock stars, reminds us that sometimes sports is much, much more than just a game. Thanks for checking out the video today, everyone. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, if there are sports stories you'd like to see come to life here on the channel, feel free to drop your ideas into those same comments. Until next time, I think I'm going to fire up some Grateful Dead tunes. It just feels right.